questions, what are the roles? What can you do with them? How do they match? With me tonight is Dani and Johanna. Johanna is our special guest tonight. Hello, Johanna.
Hello, hi.
Hi. We're going to ask everybody for a few minutes of patience because Dania needs to keep pressing the admit all button. Everybody's by now familiar with this Zoom game, so it keeps popping up on my screen how many people entered the waiting room. So I'm glad that so many found us tonight. Hello and welcome again. We're going to get started shortly. Okay, while we have this another minute of admitting everybody, so we have 90 minutes together. As you can see, there's 3 of us. So Dani and I have been running this series for a while, and there's always somebody else joining us. And tonight it's Johanna joining us. And we have, of course, material prepared for you. And we're also particularly interested to hear Johanna's story, but also her take on data careers, how they're developing. And then we're also really here to answer your questions. So the case I want to put to you is that we have these 90 minutes together. Maybe you already have some questions at the back of your mind or at the forefront of your mind, so to speak. And Zoom has this chat function. So if you are familiar with it, you will have seen it. If not, I'm just going to type a hello and welcome so that the chat function hopefully pops up for you. So we have this chat function, and you can use the chat function to ask questions at any time. So the real advantage of this is that whenever you have a question, you can simply please type it into the chat and we can pick it up, okay? This means we don't have to do complicated Q&A sessions. We can just keep going, keep the flow going. Some of the questions we'll pick up and we'll answer them live for you. Sometimes perhaps Johanna, Dani, or I, or maybe another participant is kind of faster and we can type an answer into the chat immediately. And that way we actually hope to maximize what you get out of the 90 minutes that we have together. Dania, how are you doing on the admit all?
All right, I'm still admitting people, and here we have the first question. Thank you. If you're allowed to record the meeting. So yes, I have 2 notes on that. The first one is that we are recording the session now. And the second one is that the session is also being transmitted live on YouTube. So if you don't wish to appear on the recordings or on YouTube live, you just you have to keep your camera and your microphone off. Otherwise, you're going to be showing, yes. And if you want to record, that's fine, but also you can, the YouTube session will be accessible for everyone, also afterwards, like automatically. So you can also watch it there later.
Okay, then shall we get started?
Yes, let's do that. Some more people are joining, but it's fine.
Exactly, Dania's in control. She is going to move us forward through the initial slides. So the way this is going to work, I'm going to say a few introductory remarks, show you some of the initial slides, tell you what this is about, what kind of questions we would be able to answer. And then actually, after a few minutes, I'm going to kind of hand over to Dania and Johanna, who are going to be doing the major part of tonight's webinar. I'll be staying with you and helping out, particularly on the chat with answering questions and perhaps making sure that no question gets lost.
Yes, great.
Okay, then off we go. Super. So, why are you here? Why are we doing this? Why do we think that what we're doing here matters to you? So, I mean, data careers have been going on for a decade or so. It was 2012 that this data scientist is the sexiest job of the 21st century was published in the Harvard Business Review. We're kind of 10 years later, and the number of practitioners has increased. But what still holds true, I think, or we think, is the quote that you see in front of you. So no matter who you are, self-improvement is one of the most important and most overlooked attributes of young AI talent. It only takes 4 years of experience to become a senior AI researcher or 5 years of experience to lead an entire institute. And then the determination and discipline to improve both the hard and soft skills continually will be the deciding factor in an AI researcher's career. So the guy who made this comment, Jean-François Gagné, is a French-Canadian entrepreneur who was, or is also the co-founder of something called Element AI, a company that was recently sold, but that was once the most or best funded AI startup there was. And his co-founder was a deep learning researcher by the name of Joshua Benjo. And Garnier has been writing talent reports or practitioner reports on the global situation for a number of years that are actually worth reading. So if you take his name or type in global AI talent report into your search engine, you'll get there. They're interesting to read. And he had this observation a while ago, and we still think that this holds, that the field is young, the field is new, it's developing, it's changing and getting more interesting because there's now more people doing this. But on the whole, it's still full of opportunities, particularly if you're willing to kind of work with self-determination and discipline on improving. And the webinar today fits in by highlighting that as the field advances, specialization, so specific data roles, become more important. And the three of us are actually all members of something called the AIGuild, who's bringing you this tonight. And we've been working on this with now 800 plus members. And we're working on having practitioners covered from entry level through lead on to CXO. And this is also actually the composition of the 800 members of the AIGuild. So we're 800 members, but 200 plus you will find our seniors, leads, directors, CDO, something like this. So it's indeed precisely a practitioner community. And we're really working on covering, the whole journey and being there for people, ideally, of course, for a lifetime, or at least for their professional lifetime. And we've developed something that tries to help people do this. So for the top level experts, we have an accreditation process going where we've just completed a pilot. For mid-level to senior level, we've worked on developing personal competency profiles to help them advance their career faster. And then at the entry level, we have a service around a validated CV that we hope puts, the talent right in front of hiring managers and gets them more interviews. Next one. Oh, already me. So this is, so to speak, me. Hello again. So for the AIGuild, I'm the head of the data career. I'm also a founding member. I ran a campaign also called 10,000 Data Scientists for Europe. I'm a former bootcamp director, so somebody that has been directly involved with getting talents in the industry. And as part of that, I've been doing some version of data career coaching and helping practitioners since 2017. If you like, you can find me on LinkedIn. Next up is Dania, whereby I now hand over to Dania to introduce herself, please.
Thank you, Chris. Yes, hi, welcome. Nice to see you all here today. I'm Dania. For the Data Lift, I'm the head of Data Lift for the AIGuild. And I worked as a data scientist with machine learning models for predictive analytics mainly. I before was also teaching at a bootcamp, and I started my data career in 2012. I started as a data analyst in the marketing department. I'm also on LinkedIn, so please go there and connect. And then I hand over to our special guest today. Johanna, would you like to say a few words about yourself?
Hi there. Yeah, I'm also very happy to join this meeting and see you all here. Yeah, what I put here as remarks about me is also already the result of work with Chris, right? So, but we can refer to this later. So I've been working for industrial corporates for 8+ years. I used mainly machine learning for efficiency gains. And I'm also experienced in running large international projects. Yeah, and I'm also interested not only in programming languages, but real languages. Yeah, and I also posted the link, or here's the link to my LinkedIn profile, so you're happy to join.
Cool. Yes, for sure. We are going to talk more about your journey, and people can ask you more questions as we move forward. Let me, go to the next one.
Yes, so this is simply the outline of what you're going to get over the next 90 minutes, plus your questions and any responses that we have. Just a reminder that if you have questions at any time, please type them into the chat. We're going to pick them up. So it comes in 4 parts. We're just going to talk a bit about what the AIGuild does. Then we're going to deep dive into this question of the specialization of the data roles, so that it asks practitioners to kind of choose one. And increasingly being a data analyst or a data scientist or a data engineer or someone in ML or someone in NLP are specialized roles. Then we're going to look at the skills that are required in those. And then if we get to it at the end, we provide a bit of an overview in terms of what you might want to consider as you move your data career forwards. So very quickly, the AIGuild got started some 2 years ago, and part of it is always that we've worked together with the practitioners in the AIGuild to understand where they are with their careers and provide support, also learn from this. So there's one is the market data, but 2 is actually the experience and insight from doing some of this. So some of the things that we've seen is that a search for a first as well as the second role may actually take 6 months or more. So if you're out there and you're searching and it's perhaps taking a bit longer, and then on top of it, we have the COVID pandemic. So we know from experience it takes time. We also know that sometimes it may actually be easier to upgrade inside a company. By this, I mean that perhaps you're in a role as an analyst, maybe a marketing analyst, maybe a data analyst, maybe you're in business intelligence. And then as the company moves forward with more data infrastructure and perhaps machine learning, it's sometimes actually easier to upgrade inside a company. We also know, going together with the fact that you sometimes have to search a bit longer, that job advertisements may still be misleading and confusing. So companies want to do this. They also have an idea what they want to do. And then, of course, you need to communicate it. And then when you're in the beginning, it's sometimes very tempting to kind of have a very wide-ranging job adverts that ask for all kinds of things. And we know that more senior practitioners in the AIGuild sometimes default companies when they read these job applications by just saying, well, they don't really know what they're looking for. It's not specific enough, so I'm not interested. So there's this issue going on. If you have stories to share or you want to know something about this, please ask. And then finally, we've also noticed that even though, there is an interview process, there may be technical testing, there may be 2 rounds of interviews and so on, sometimes the role in real life may not match the expectations of the talent actually. And this then creates a retention problem and may lead people to move on after like 12 to 24 months. So we've seen that as well. And then, so to speak, on the wider market trends, so already highlighted the specialization and differentiation of roles, then the rising value of domain expertise. By this, we mean that it increasingly matters in which industry you are. So there was a time, there was a time when it looked like data science was kind of general purpose all around, move from one industry to the other. And yes, there was the computational biologist, and she moved because she was doing image processing all the way to autonomous driving. And like 5 years ago, these things were possible. But there's a rising value of domain expertise. So if you are in the health sector, or you're in the finance sector, or you're in the mobility sector, that kind of domain expertise is increasing valuable because there's specific challenges that come with it, specific types of data, ways in which you deploy products. And, as things become better and more specialized, these things matter more. And on top of it, we've seen that the experimental phase with the proof of concept plays is in some companies coming to an end. So there are tougher questions about what value is being created, whether it makes sense to business. This on the whole is good because it means that there's serious investment and stuff gets deployed. It matters to the customer. It matters to the bottom line of the business. So this is good news. It's moving forward, but it also means, again, it reinforces the 2 points above. It then matters more. Yes, next slide. A quick shift, so to speak, to the AIGuild itself. So you see here some of the events that we have been offering over the past year. So one of the things that we really do regularly, so I mentioned it's a practitioner community with 800 plus members now. And we're all still stuck in the COVID pandemic. So what we've tried to do over the past years is actually move everything online and allow people to connect online more and run events and share information. Also, actually, obviously you can apply to become a member of the AIGuild if you're not one. So to facilitate these kinds of exchanges. And this also means not just, so to speak, the AIGuild as an organization running events, but the members of the AIGuild typically participating in all of this. So this is what you can see here. So for the webinars or the events that we can do, you can be a guest, you can host an event yourself. If you're a member of the AIGuild, you can participate in the career development program, or you can become an accredited expert. This is live, and the first pilot is just coming to a conclusion. So there are many opportunities of participating in the practitioner community. And with that, I hand over to Dani and Johanna.
Thank you, Chris. I have a few slides now talking about the specialization of the different roles. So I'll just get started. What we have here is an image inspired on the original one published by Google in the research, what they called hidden technical debt in machine learning systems. And this main part of it is about all the pieces that have to come together in a machine learning system when we are, especially when we're talking about productionizing a solution. And then I put some color code on it to map to different roles. So for example, what we see here in blue would be roles for data engineering, that is data collection, data quality, and data pre-processing. Then in yellow, we have the data analyst and the analyst tasks. So the analysis, understanding of the business logic, and handling A/B testing, for example. In red, we have the data scientist, would be about the tasks of feature extraction, parameter configuration, and offline validation. Then in gray, we have the machine learning engineer, which is here mapped to the overall infrastructure where the system is, the configuration of the system, the machine resource management, process management tools, and the overall monitoring. The last one in green is the AI researcher, which is here mapped to machine learning models in the sense that the task here is about creating a novelty or researching a new approach or a new configuration of model. So this is to show that, yes, as Chris was mentioning before, the field is evolving and we are understanding what are the different pieces that have to come together in order to have a machine learning system in production. And many tasks also mean that there are many different skills and tasks involved. And what we are trying to understand here is the trend to have special roles or specific roles for each of those tasks. And a disclaimer that this is not so black and white. So maybe you will see different job descriptions out there, or even different functions that will have a mix of those tasks. So this is more of the first definition that we are trying to make it clear. So here a bit more in details for each of those 5 roles that I described before. If we look, for example, here, the data scientist in red, the task or the main task is to understand the business case, build features to train predictive models that will address those use cases. The skills are statistics, SQL, programming, for example, in Python or in R, and then the machine learning and deep learning techniques. Then just below the machine learning researcher, the machine learning engineer, we have here in gray, the task is to optimize, deploy, and maintain machine learning models in production. The skills are very different than they're about software engineering, DevOps, and systems architecture. Right in the middle in green, we have the AI researcher. Here, the task, as I mentioned before, it's about building new machine learning algorithms and finding custom scientific solutions. The skills are research, presenting at conferences, and writing scientific publications. Then in blue, we have the data engineer, whose task is to build and maintain infrastructure and the pipeline to collect, clean, and pre-process data. The skills required to accomplish those tasks are understanding of distributed systems, databases, and software engineering. The last one here in yellow is the data analyst. Data analyst task is mainly to understand the business and the data to be able to report what happens. And then the skills required to be able to perform the task is descriptive analytics, SQL, statistics, and dashboarding and visualization tools. So here we see that there are 5 different defined roles. And for each of them, we have different tasks and different skills that go together with the role. And when we look back at the first slide where we had the entire picture of the machine learning system, we can see that really data science is a team sport, because we need the different roles and we need all of those pieces to be able to have a model in production. So the roles or the skill sets need to collaborate in order to have a successful result. And the team really is about complementing the expertise of one another. So not only the data roles as we have here in the left, but also possibly some tech expert roles like NLP engineers or computer vision engineers or DevOps. Those would be dedicated experts depending on the type of solution you are building. And you also have product and business roles like a product owner or a product manager and possibly a domain expert. And this is still evolving, so I leave here maybe other or new roles that will come up. What is important, or the main takeaway here, I think, is that having this full picture of the end-to-end machine learning system is helpful when you are one of those in the team, because then it's easier to understand what you have to do, organize the work, and consolidate everything. So at the end, it puts together and finalizes in a solution. Then we can hear more about Johanna.
Okay, so let me just present where I do come from. So in the beginning, I did study mechanical engineering. And this is while I was a dual student at Siemens, which means that we were studying on the one hand, and on the other hand, we were working in the office, and we were also doing some kind of these craftsmanships. So we really learned how to work with metal. And then I started out as a project manager at Siemens, and there I was also responsible for tasks that are similar to data analyst in the beginning, like somehow making dashboards about, let's say, personal forecast. How many people do we need to send out as engineers on projects? And yeah, this started my interest in data and data science. So this is when I decided myself that I want to do the upskilling, and I did a lot of online classes and also attended a boot camp, and then started to look for projects within the company where I could join and learn and get some expertise. And afterwards, I also started to initiate projects, and I also became kind of an expert to other projects where I could give advice as I learned more and more about the data science. And yeah, this is when I totally changed my tasks to data scientist tasks there. So we were doing machine learning models to predict certain things. For example, how many materials do I need of a certain kind for a certain time? So this kind of prognosis or forecast. And yeah, this was probably also, like Chris mentioned, this was this kind of upskilling or changing within the organization, right? Getting into those jobs there. And from that, I applied then to other companies, and I just recently joined now Deutsche Bahn, and I'm a senior AI specialist now. What does it mean? This is also another word than those words that Dani just presented to us, because this is a mixture that on the one hand, we do data scientist tasks. So we do have to develop POCs. So we have to get first insights into the data and develop first models and see what is possible, what can we predict, or and then if we see it is possible and it makes sense, then we also have to take the project management role. So this is this hybrid thing of data scientist and project management. And then we also get a team of developers and domain experts, to in the end get a product that can be deployed and used. Yeah, and we will see about the next step where this is going to lead in a few years.
Yeah, right. Yes, thank you. I think it's pretty interesting, your journey, because you were mentioning that you started like from the, let's say, mechanical engineering background, and then you started doing project management, and then you got interested in data science, more, let's say, the machine learning aspect, because as a project manager, you mentioned that you were already dealing a lot with data and analytics and reporting, right?
Yes.
And that was what sparked your interest to really move to data science.
So
and I was wondering about this, like, how did you upskill exactly? So you mentioned you did a lot of online courses. You also were looking for projects inside the company. And I think it's a good example of how to change roles inside the company.
Because for me, this was the best way to go, because I knew I don't have enough experience to already apply outside. Yeah, so what did I do? At first, I took online classes of Data Quest, which I liked very much, because there you are really forced to do the whole coding yourself, not only one line or
Okay.
two variables, which is mostly required in the online classes. And these were like the real basics. And it even started with Python in the beginning, and then the real basic concepts of statistics and algebra. And
did you have any experience in coding before in your job?
I didn't use it in the job at all, but we did it at university a little bit. Like,
Okay.
yeah. So the concept was familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, very different than doing the hands-on, like, daily work with
Yes.
programming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
And
then I decided to join the boot camp to get like a deep dive, because then there were all these special knowledge that we got, like NLP or computer vision and reinforcement learning, time series forecasting, all this kind of things. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, after having the basic understanding of the programming language and of the like the basic statistics and math, then you could dive deep in the bootcamp into those topics. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
And to me, it's pretty cool, this new role, like the recent one that you got. First, congratulations on the new job.
Thanks.
But it sounds like it was really a very good match for you, because you mentioned that you do the development or the proof of concept of the modeling. And then once it gets the green light to move forward to deployment, you do the more of the project management part.
Right.
It's also going back to the experience you had before in your career.
Yeah, this is also what I thought that it really matches, because I do know how to manage projects, and I also, on the other hand, develop POCs, and tried to think about use cases.
Cool, really cool.
Yeah.
I see that we have a question for you here from Thomas. Thank you for asking. He's asking you, Johanna, how long did you stay in each of your positions, starting at the project manager station?
So project manager was, let's say 5 years, I think, because I mean, during these the student program, we were also already involved into project management. So maybe it's even like 6 years or more.
Okay.
And the data science upskilling only happened like during the last 2 or 3 years already. Time's move fast. So 3 years ago, I started the upskilling. And then soon after the boot camp finished, so this was maybe 9 months after I started getting into data science at all, I focused on data science as an industrial data scientist.
Cool. Let me go to the next slide then. Yes.
Yeah, so this is also something we did within the AIGuild. This is kind of this competency profile where Chris and I tried to really understand what are the strengths I have in my profile, which are different from others, right? So make it unique. So,
right.
Yeah, so you see this sentence or these sentences on top, which should just give a summary of my CV or development. It's mainly what I had in my introduction. So I'm a data scientist with an engineering background, working for industrial corporates for 8+ years and so on. And then what you can see here is this T-shape profile. I think there'll be some more information about this later, but still those experiences or things I have like more knowledge about, they are like longer and deep, like the T, and the other ones are more like broad and also important knowledge and skills I have, but they are not like the main focus. So this is then data analytics, which I did also during being a project manager on the left, and on the right is also this training, which happened during the upskilling. And after the boot camp, I also started giving classes within the company to help upskill other colleagues, give them basic knowledge about machine learning or NLP or computer vision. And those main areas are like project initiator and NLP in the middle, in the center. So project initiator, this is also something that we discussed a lot with Chris, that this is very important, because this was something while I was looking for projects, I started to initiate projects somehow. And I was looking for relevant colleagues, or at least other colleagues that had the skills needed, the required skills. And there we also tried to help build an AI strategy within the company. We did some part forecasting, and also some NLP analytics, which leads to this NLP skill. So this used to be the main area of interest. Where we also like try to find paragraphs, to classify documents, critical paragraphs, these kind of things. But now in the new job, I will focus on computer vision. So I'll get some more experience there and get an expert there.
It's cool. So what I am seeing here is, like you were saying, a description of your specific skills. And this is pretty good because it gives, like at a glance, it gives an idea of what are your strengths, like the project initiator and NLP in this case, and what else you did that is also relevant. So the data analytics, since you have experience, a lot of experience with that, and the training, like the upskilling you did with your colleagues in the previous company. I like it because even though in the beginning or the first sentence it says you are a data scientist, it's also related to this evolution of the data field. Like we see that in the beginning, everyone was a data scientist and different flavors, let's say, of data scientists. And now we have kind of a mix of different job descriptions and different job titles, like data scientist, data analyst, machine learning engineer, data engineer, and so on. But this way is something that you can say that whatever is the title you have, for example, data scientist, but what is it that you're doing inside this like broad umbrella of data science? So you're doing data analytics, you are strong in initiating projects, and you focus on NLP and you do upskilling. It's also important, I think, to say like the background you have and what kind of industry domains you're working on, because it is a differentiator. So it is something that you have, for example, experience working in industrial corporates, that makes a difference. So it's not like you're dealing with any types of data or any types of application, but it's your experience is specific to that and therefore relevant for that. And together with your engineering background, I think it's completing. Since also a lot of people in the data field come from different backgrounds, right? So it's also something that we have a variation. Cool.
Yeah. And I think this is also like relevant for the companies I've been with. They were all like, someone just said heavy metal companies, so like dealing with metal somehow, right? So this is also the domain expertise. Yeah, it's relating to.
Yes, because in the end, of course, the type of models we can use, or the math and the statistics behind it, or even the Python code or the packages, they are all the same kind of, but the information you're taking, how you interpret it, and how you can make relevant use of it to generate an output that will be useful in the end. That is what makes the difference. It's what makes the project to have an impact or to add value in the end. This is the kind of understanding that you have already from your background and for your experience in the domain. I see there's another question for you in the chat from Christiana. Thank you. Did you use the skills sheet for applying?
I was thinking about it because, but then I decided I will take the sentence on top as the introductory sentence of my CV, but I won't take this as a layout, but I'm kind of I integrated it into the cover letter then, because I preferred to just send the CV with the sentence. But it helped me like realize what the strengths are, what I have to focus on when writing the cover letter, and also when structuring the CV.
Yeah, I mean, now that we read it, it's pretty clear, like what are your expertise, the two in the center and the ones together with it. But to get to that, I'm guessing that it was a lot of like reflecting on what you did and what you want to do and what you want to show also to others. So they have this clear idea of who you are professionally.
Right. And it can also change like all the time.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
The technology is changing fast, and we also as people change. So I think it's expected that it changes. But I think it's also some kind of like the thought process that you have to go through to get a clear picture like this. This is something that you learn and you can always do. Like whenever you feel the need to do, you can do it again and come up with an updated version of it.
No, that's true. And that was really helpful, to have someone to discuss this with.
Cool. We have one more slide here. Yes.
All right. This is just to give an overview over this AI strategy, or my new position at Deutsche Bahn, at this German railway company, because this was something I was lacking in my old company. I have to say I wasn't in Siemens. I was in Siemens Energy. They just separated last autumn. And in Siemens, I think there is a lot more going on with the strategy, but in Siemens Energy, there is slowly strategy evolving. And this is also something I was looking for in the new company. I wanted to have an AI strategy in place. And this is, why I also put this information about the AI strategy there, because it's very interesting. I think also historically, Deutsche Bahn had the same evolution as Siemens Energy is going through now, that in the beginning it's all like grassroots. A lot of people try out whatever ideas they have, and then there is the point where you need a strategy. You somehow need to get a concept because people start doing the same thing over twice, and and they're not coordinated. And here, what I really like about it is that within the company or the corporate, it is really part of the overall strategy. So there is, it's called Starke Schiene, Strong Rail is the name of the whole strategy for the next years. And the AI is a central technology within it. So it's really written down in the strategy. So you have like the backup or the support from management and strategy to do the projects. And of course, it also then refers to best practices and standards that you somehow give it a framework. And on the other hand, you also have to get the community organized, because there are so many people in very, very different resource doing something with AI. And I mean, of course, to the right, I can also say something then about the implementation. There you see then the most focused areas where projects are related to. So on the one hand, it's like really something that improves the maintenance thing, and therefore gives the overall AI processes for the trains, like maintenance, that the intervals get shorter, you have the right pieces in your stock you need. And we also start to do this camera analysis of the trains, that we know how good or bad are the parts. Do we have to replace them already or later? These kind of things. Wow. And this is always then a collaborative implementation with subsidiary companies. So this is where we have then the development team and also maybe service subsidiaries that help us and work with us.
Yeah, cool. I think it's pretty interesting what you're saying, that the strategy or the AI is integrated in the company strategy, because that's pretty much the case, that you have to have buy-in from everyone in the company, and especially from, if you have it from the C-level, then you can also have the green light for productionizing more of the project. Like you were saying, maybe in an initial stage of AI, when the company is starting to understand what is possible, what is the data available, and so on. It's a lot of proof of concepts and a lot of people driving forward projects to figure out what's there. And at some point, you realize that it makes sense to just unify and come up with those kind of frameworks and standards, so that everyone can produce more and faster by collaborating with the other teams. We have here two questions for you. I'm going to read the first one. It's about your transition. You always had some domain knowledge as a connecting thread, right? Do I have a good overview and foundational knowledge of data analysis, software engineering, machine learning theory skills from technology and engineering, but not directly from business? Now I want to get a position in Germany. I was working in Asia. Do you have any advice on this? Maybe also Chris, if you have some advice. The question was directed to her, but please feel free to turn on your microphone and say something. Yes, so
Johanna, you go first.
Oh, okay. I think, of course, the domain knowledge always helps, because at least what I see is, even for us within the company, it is important that we are able to say we're not doing AI just for fun because it's cool, because everyone is talking about it. We always start from the business case, right? So there is one mechanical reason why we need another more efficient strategy, whatever, to solve the problem. And this is when we say, okay, let's try this. So for me, I think this domain expertise is always very important. But of course, there are probably also other companies like consultancies where it's probably easier or also possible to work without domain expertise. Yeah, Chris, to you.
Yeah. Actually, Johanna, I wanted to also take you back to an earlier question by CNC. I've been trying to answer on the chat, but I thought I'd loop you in as well. So it's somebody who's been working as an industrial engineer in Germany, gained professional experience using Python programming and statistics. And he says he doesn't see an opportunity for me to change a role to data science within the company that he or she is in at the moment, but has been brushing up skills in SQL and machine learning via online courses, but lacks hands-on training. I was thinking that, I mean, there's a difference to your situation in the sense that you did upskilling and then did apply it at Siemens, where you were working before and after. But what was your status before you decided that you needed hands-on experience in terms of boot camping? Where were you with SQL, machine learning, Python programming?
So because I was starting doing these online classes already, like in the evenings, I had an intermediate level already, I think, so that I was at least able to handle the most common cases. And I think I already then reached out to people before I joined the bootcamp, to the first people, to see, are there any people doing something? And I was looking around and it took some time, but then I found people. And they were also like at the same stage that I was. So they weren't like very sure how to use all those models and strategies and whatever, because they were already also only starting to upskill. But they were part of the R&D department, where they are somehow able to try out new approaches. And this is where I then found most of the use cases, because R&D was like closest to this.
And follow-on question. So in the upskilling, I mean, you were working in a company in a specific, I mean, one, it's a type of company, industrial corporate. And then the other thing is also a domain. I think you were mainly connected to the energy sector, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
So you went through the upskilling, and because you had previous experience and also sort of domain expertise in that area, how much did that help? Did you have prior awareness of the data, the relevant data?
Yeah, of course. What we were analyzing at that time were sensor data of huge turbines, and there for sure domain knowledge is important, that you understand what do those information, what does it mean, right? What does this particular sensor describe? What is the usual shape it has, or whatever, yeah? Just also to understand and to get an idea how to feature engineer or get better results.
Yes, so Dani, you're asking, yes, so about the domain expertise. I think Johanna's answers quite show that the one thing that we really clearly see in the AIGuild with the practitioners and the way they're moving and where they find their next job, that this domain expertise is increasingly relevant. And it's got to do with the very beginning of Johanna's answer. So, at the beginning it was sexy, and then you could do a lot of different things, including many POCs, but now it's about the business case. And the moment it is about the business case, certain things need to come together, not just your technical competence, but your understanding of the domain that you're working in, because how do you want to create business value if you in the business sense don't know what you're doing?
Yeah, so I would say, because the idea is not that you really need to understand it all, but if you focus on one kind of domain and you understand that, this is what you can start growing. And I think this is more or less the advice, right? That you need to at least understand what is the business, or what is the domain, or what is the data telling you, where does it fit? Like in the example you gave, Johanna, with the turbines, you have the sensor data, and you need to understand what does it mean in the end, what is the information that it's giving you, and what is the process you're trying to optimize there, or what is it that you're trying to predict in the end. And this kind of understanding, if you don't have it already, this is what you should try to figure out when you have access to the data. As important as getting the data and understanding the model and knowing programming languages is, but that part is also important. And a lot of the times it's something that you get to learn after you are already inserted in the company, maybe not so much before. I don't know. There is another question for you, Johanna. As a project initiator, what strategy is most successful in securing buy-in from skeptical management?
Yeah.
Tricky, yeah.
Well,
Skeptical
tricky.
management.
Because yeah, sometimes we just started doing the POCs without asking anyone and then just presenting the results. And yeah, that was the only thing that kind of helped to show this is what can be done. And then it's easier to talk about and decide if we want to move on, like really turning this POC into something or not. Well, yeah, I think this is for me what I think is the most successful strategy. But of course, yeah, if you don't have like this extra time and you don't want to do this, no, but I think you need something to show them what the value is. If
yes,
mostly
the business value.
Yeah, if they don't understand what is possible and what's not possible.
Yeah, I would agree to that you have to understand what is the business value that you're adding with your POC. Of course, if you already developed it and you have some results to show, that's the perfect world. But even before, if you are trying to get buy-in, to get time to work on the POC, I think this is the angle, to show what you already, like the data you already collected and the knowledge you already have, put that together and put the potential of the business value that you can add with that approach. That would be my approach, at least. Yes, Chris?
Right.
I have a follow-on question to you, Johanna. I actually want to know how you did it. So on your competency profile, right, we have the project initiator, and then you just, to some extent you said, I started moving, then we started running, then we simply did it, and so on and so on. And it's really interesting. So how do you do it? How do you do it without getting caught, or how do you do it without getting told off? And how do you do it so that your colleagues actually support you and move with you and not just say, oh no, I'm going for lunch now. So how did you do this?
I think I was looking for people who also were very interested in upskilling and in understanding what these technologies know and can do, right? And this is, yeah, where we decided this could be a good idea to tackle a problem. Let's just do a POC together. And then we did it sometimes at night. Just yeah.
That was going to be my next question. Was it on Fridays or was it on Sunday?
Yes. Yeah. But this was also because we were willing to put extra work in it, because we understood it as kind of also upskilling process, which doesn't have to be part of the work time.
Yeah, in the end, it's also investment on yourself and your skills, not just for the project itself.
Yeah, but it's great. Yeah. So, it's great that you're able to take the initiative, move forward, that you have an eye for finding the right kind of people that will help you move forward. And then that you found that by, kind of basically doing it after hours, you can really make a move. And at the end of the day, I guess it paid off for you, given your recent moves. Yes.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, it's probably not the best strategy. Maybe there's another one. Yeah.
Yeah, but great. So anybody listening or watching this, yeah. So why I'm asking you is I've been around long enough, and we all know these situations, right? So you would like to move, and then there's the people around you and the company around you, and sometimes it's actually really hard to move. And we already had this question tonight that was phrased in, I have a problem, I think in my company I actually can't, or it's difficult. And very often it is and has been and still is. So I was interested in this. So to all of you, so to speak, I think the first thing that Johanna did and did right is she found allies within the company that were interested in data, were interested in upskilling themselves, and didn't mind in occasionally putting in the extra hour. And that's how you did it.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. And even this is also probably a reason why I then changed the company, because I still felt, yeah, the people around me are not like willing enough, yeah, to take this on.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yes, you can write questions at any time, just reiterating. I think this was the last dedicated slide from Johanna. Yes. So I have some slides here about the T-shaped skills for the data roles. As she mentioned before, the idea is that you have a set of broad skills in which you have some basic understanding, but then you have some deep expertise, some things that you understand deeply. And the idea here is that for all of the 5 roles that I was describing, the data engineer, data analyst, data scientist, machine learning engineer, and the AI researcher, all of them would share those broad expertise, but they'll have different deep expertise. So for example, the data analyst would have a deeper expertise in this area of visualization and communication. So here I have some examples of tools like Excel, Tableau, also the skills of data interpretation and the logical approach. You also have a lot of domain expertise, depending the domain, and a lot of knowledge also into machine learning algorithms, but mostly in statistics. So descriptive statistics, hypothesis testing, and probability distribution, then some regression and classification models as well. There is also the need to know some programming, for example, understanding SQL to get the data from databases, and also potentially knowing either R or Python or both to do visualizations, for example. In contrast with the data scientist role, the programming and tools area, it's more demanding on the data scientist side, because then you really need above or on top of SQL and either R or Python, also understanding of some tools like JupyterLab, Jupyter Notebooks, using Git. You still need the domain expertise as before, but maybe a bit less on the visualization and communication, though it is still here, and then a lot more on the machine learning side. So understanding how to work with open source tools, like if you're working or programming in Python, you know Pandas, scikit-learn, NumPy. And again, in contrast to the data engineer, the strongest skills are in programming and tools, though the programming languages might be a bit different, like maybe Python, but also Java or Scala. And the tools here are more towards big data and data processing, for example, Hadoop, databases, Airflow, and Jenkins for organizing the workflows and triggering the tasks. And in this other area here of software engineering and platforms, what we have is understanding of data pipelines, data structures, and knowing how to apply that in platforms in the cloud or on local OS. The next one is the machine learning engineer, which is pretty similar, but then it also has some knowledge here in the machine learning algorithms area, for example, understanding how to develop models using scikit-learn. I think that was it for the different skills.
Then I think it's a good moment to have a round of discussion before actually moving on to the final part. So actually, to all the participants, if you have more questions, now is a really good time to get rid of them. We have some time to answer them. In going there, I was actually a question to you, Johanna, if I may, so to speak, on the data roles and your observation with the industrial corporate that you've been working on. So how does that work in a large company with the emerging specialization? Do you have any experience with that?
I mean, at Siemens Energy, where I was, where they're just starting to somehow create the AI strategy, they only start defining what kind of roles might be necessary, and yeah, hopefully then refer back to those people who already have the skills. There could also still be a problem of matching this together, because at the moment they are like very high level and searching for partners like externally, AWS, NVIDIA, and also hoping to get expertise from the outside, right? So that the data science expertise doesn't necessarily have to be a main resource within. But on the other hand, the practitioners understood that it is still necessary to have the skill inside the company, that there's data scientists at least somehow. But this is the only word I've heard so far there. So there was no real specialization going on. But I think the corporates, they are usually behind. So it might take a while, and then those specializations are also going to be more defined more specifically there. Oh. And in Deutsche Bahn, I think at least within the development teams we get from the internal IT provider, there are specifications already, like different roles for different skills.
Okay, and then I have a, so to speak, a follow-on question for you. So at Siemens, you had this interest in NLP, and you now mentioned that with moving to Deutsche Bahn, it's going to be more on computer vision. So how much do you think you've already got? How do you envision getting up to speed? How do you think this is going to go?
What do you mean, like getting more expert?
Yeah, more expertise, exactly.
Yeah.
So, right?
We'll see. I mean, how's it going to go? I'm going to join a team where there's already experienced people. And also one concept is that code should be shared internally. So this is also already maybe some architecture provided there, so we don't have to start from scratch. And yeah, but I think usually it just takes a while, of course, to get into the special concept, then to understand what concepts of computer vision are now the ones that match the cases you have. But yeah, you do some research papers, whatever, and then you see what matches at the moment. And I also did some of these deep learning AI classes because they have some more advanced stuff there online, just to get into computer vision somehow, like advanced computer vision or something. And yeah, but it's just working or learning by working, getting the expertise.
Yeah, that is a good way to do it. Like when you get to learn because your job demands. I think you also have the time for doing it. But yeah, I think one of the main skills that everyone in technology has is learning how to learn, because technology is changing a lot and it's changing fast. We always have to learn new things.
Right.
It's part of it.
It's true. Right. Yeah. You have to
even
like
if you. Oh, sorry.
No, sorry. I just was saying you have to like it and have to know how to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, because even if you stay in the same area, let's say, even if you would stay in NLP, there are always new things coming up for NLP, and you will still have to learn them, or at least keep up with what's coming up, so you can still be in the state of the art and can call yourself an expert in that area.
Right. And this is why I don't see a big difference. Either I get more expertise in the NLP or I shift to CV and then learn shortly about the basics, and then also get into these very specialized transfer learning models, whatever, that are different for different use cases. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yes, we have another question for you on the chat. How is your daily work organized at your current employer? Are you working in some sort of squads approaching the different departments?
What does squad mean? Like a group of people, or?
Yeah, different
Okay.
teams.
Yeah. So we have like different teams specializing on different use cases. So we then go out to the business department that really has the problem, that has the material or the machines, let's say. And then, we also have to talk to them. How are you doing it now? And what could be the alternative process? What could be our added value there? This is for the POC, and then afterwards, of course, we start taking the development team in. Does this answer the question? I hope so.
I think so. Should we go back to the slide? Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Dani, would you like to make a move forward on the slides then?
Yes.
We'll see if more questions come in, but we can move on a bit. So to kind of bring things together, we wanted to kind of talk a bit about market orientation, or how to go about this, and how to go about kind of positioning yourselves in terms of your data career. So to bring together what we've talked about before is, so we have the data roles, and we have an increasing specialization that's visible with that would also arrive at the, so to speak, laggard larger corporates, but it'll get there. And we've already seen also in Johanna's case today, so the domain expertise, that you're in a particular field and you kind of stay there because you really also understand the business case and the data, the type of data, and so on. So this kind of matters. And perhaps also what matters is what kind of type of company you're used to. So whether you've been working in a startup or multiple startups and you are a startup-y kind of person, or you're more corporate, or you're more consultancy type of person, or you prefer actually smaller or medium-sized enterprises. So there are things, there are ways in which these things match, and we can tell by from experience or by talking to other people. And then there's, so to speak, the bigger picture. And this is why you're looking at this particular slide at the moment, which says at the top, everyone's winning, but some industries are winning bigger. So this is just simply to say that it matters which kind of industry or which kind of domain you pick. It matters in the sense that there's data available that show that in some sectors, if you look, at the X and the Y axis, in some sectors, you have high investments coming together with a higher return on investment. And sometimes you have high investments, but the returns are actually low. And then sometimes you have low investment and low returns, which is probably a good idea, which probably tells you that this isn't, it's more of a challenge. Let me put it like this. If you can go there, it can be exciting, but it's more of a challenge because investment isn't really there that much yet, and the returns are also not that clear. So if the returns are clear, then you can invest with more confidence. And it's worth considering this simply, particularly if you're earlier in your career and yet kind of need to make choices on where you go. And you see here that technology, media, and entertainment, but really also entertainment and telecommunications, is where the investment has been highest and the returns have been highest too. And it's something to be aware of. And then to translate this into, depending on where you go, what are the key challenges? So this is now, the AIGuild did make this up. We've taken this from elsewhere and seen numerous reports on this. So key industry challenges. Sometimes, and that's why we're showing you this slide, sometimes they're actually still very basic. So what it says here, data volume, accessibility, and quality. And we can also ask Johanna about that again in the moment. And she actually was already referring to that in terms of, turbine data, for example. So very often companies that are established, particularly established industrial incumbents, principally speaking, of course, sit on lots of stuff that could or would generate data, right? You have the machinery, you have the business process, you have the customer data, and so on and so on and so on. But it doesn't actually mean that you have the volume or the accessibility or the quality yet there to be able to do something with it in terms of analytics or machine learning. Yeah, this is a different game. And sometimes what the problem is that it that in itself is a challenge. So I'm just thinking of a very large manufacturer in the mobility sector, where one of the challenges was that while they were producing the same product the world over, and they were operating in 35 countries, the factories had very different machines to churn out the same product. And they simply had the problem that they would like to be more data-driven, but given the huge diversity and non-standard machines, they had difficulties moving forward on that part. So really, data volume, accessibility, and quality at the very basic level, even if you're large and you principally have it, can be a challenge. And for you as the practitioner, I think this can be a problem, but it's also an opportunity. So the opportunity in there is actually to get your hands dirty or to get stuck in and to help companies really build the data infrastructure that then in a second step allows them to make these things run, and run them smoother. So that's one. The other one that you see here is trust of customers, stakeholders, and employees. And actually, Johanna's story today was a testimony to that. So, you need buy-in, you need to get going, you need to find people that support you and do something with you. Then at the end of the day, it goes back to management, and they need to give the green light. And not only do they need to say yes, you have to put your money where your mouth is. Then you actually have to find the money to be able to invest. And then there's this point where data and AI just ain't cheap. This isn't, it isn't a startup where you have a nice little front end and you go and try and find some customers. So it's often not like that. So that really matters. And tied to that, the third point here is that you really also need to look at the competence around you. So, how many of the employees around you, the management and the company as a whole, are actually competent in what they do. And this has been flagged, particularly also for Europe, time and time again. So the one big story of the past 5 years is there's really been a lack of people that have the skills. So really just simply the skills. That's been one. But the second point that was always noted by people researching this is the second biggest impediment was that the company and the management of the company and so on, in some basic sense, just wasn't data literate enough to understand either what the requirements were, nor what the potential opportunity is. And if you get neither the requirements nor the opportunity, you're stuck. Because how do you don't understand what you need to do. You also don't really see what you get out of it. So you do nothing. This is getting better. It's also sometimes getting better fast. So we have a lot more practitioners now, and there is more data literacy in companies because time has passed and simply people get it. But it's something you need to be aware of and you need to be willing to handle. And here's another one on the startup challenges. So for startups, actually, it's sometimes simply the same. We're saying this advisedly as observers of the German and European ecosystem. So just because it's a software company, it doesn't mean it's a data company. It doesn't follow necessarily from this. And even if it was a company that was kind of digital first and so on, yes, again, it has this ability to produce data in large volumes that would have the quality to do things, but you actually need to do it. It doesn't happen out of nowhere. And then we have seen large startups that have emerged in the last 20 years that face this challenge of doing more with the data and also producing the right amount and quality of data, and it's not always easy.
And if also having the data accessible. So generating the data and the data existing, whatever the quality, doesn't mean that it's accessible.
So you need to again have this willingness and investment into the infrastructure. Then if you're looking at smaller startups, something you need to be aware of is what the company funding or the runway is. So runway is a technical term for all things being equal and no further investment coming in. When is the company going to be insolvent? And for startups that depend on venture capital, if you go and work for them, it's a question you really need to ask. You need to sit there in the interview and say, what's your runway? And if they give you vague answers, you need to say, no, you need to be able to calculate your runway in months. So what is it? Because you need to understand whether the company has 12 or more months runway before starting there, because it's your risk if they become solvent after 6 months and you have to find a new job. And then again, also here with the expertise levels and the team size, so very small startups may still have the unicorn data scientists, so one person trying to do everything. It's not always a good sign. And then bigger startups, you actually also do really need to ask how big the team is, whether they have specialized roles, also whom the data people report to, and whether the people the data people report to is data literate. So this really, I mean, in large corporates, it also matters, but in startups that are more agile and moving forward, it actually really does matter who the lead of the data team is and who they report to and whether they get it, whether the team really has the backing of, I don't know, the CTO, for example, because that person is also data literate. If that is not the case, then you need to investigate and you need to find out. The easiest way to do this, particularly if you're talking to smaller companies, is to talk to some of the people that are already working there, and you can find out that way.
Yeah, but also for big companies, if we can find someone that already works there and talk to them, it's always great.
Okay, so in wrapping it up, the recommendation is to kind of keep observing the market. So keep observing it for the trends of companies advertising for specific roles. See if they get better, in your opinion, they get better at advertising the role by being more specific. So, you know, if it was a data analytics role, do they actually make, you know, how clear do they make that with analytics, they understand being able to handle a lot of data, report on it, visualize, dashboarding, and so on and so on? Or is in the data analyst role actually hidden machine learning a lot without making it clear? Sometimes this doesn't mean that you shouldn't apply. So one of the recommendations there is, if you're looking for a first or a second role, if you match the profile of the company like half, it's probably worth giving it a shot, because we mentioned at the beginning that these advertisements aren't always that great. It's also another way of looking at it is to think about this not just from the perspective of applying and having your CV ready and sending a cover letter or whatever it is that you do, but also kind of getting your skills profile and your CV ready and being able to talk to your network and to your contacts and to actually use that to kind of, in an ideal scenario, what you do is you have a CV that is like a product. So your CV kind of needs to stand on its own and communicate what you're looking for. And then other people can help you. So Johanna mentioned that she used from the competency profile, the top sentence kind of in her CV. And if you do something like that, if you have a clear profile statement at the top that says who you are, what you do, what you bring to the table, and so on, then other people can respond to that without, you know, first having to ask another person or phoning you or something. So it's important that it's a standalone product that your network can help you with by kind of, you know, pointing out opportunities that might fit what you're doing. And this is the point about looking for matches between employers' needs and your skills profile. Yeah, so understanding where this match is greatest. And then the final point here is to scan the industry and the startups for the most promising use cases. So this is this idea connected to a slide we had earlier about some winning big. So to kind of understand where the trends are going and where opportunities are emerging. So one of the big trends of the last 3 years that you're probably aware of is that NLP and computer vision were for a while, so to speak, part of machine learning or part of deep learning, but they're increasingly really, really specific roles, and they're becoming more important. And there are also certain kinds of successes that people understand. So I come again with my favorite example about what can be an issue on the German AI market. This observation from Thorsten Schön, who said, you know what the problem is with AI in Germany is when people think that you can build Alexa with 3 people. Yeah, and Alexa is this NLP product, so that people think you can build Alexa with 3 people. And he said, I checked, it's 5,000. I, after talking to him, checked again. No, it's 10,000. So Amazon has announced that there are 10,000 people working on Alexa alone. Of course, it's not 10,000 NLP engineers. Yeah, but the point is, if it's 10,000 people working on Alexa as a whole and the product and so on, it's for sure not 3 NLP engineers, but hundreds, if not thousands, in some ways working on this to improve the product, make it work in different languages and so on. Yeah. So this is the thing. It needs to look for use cases that have this potential to scale and to become bigger, because this is also, at the end of the day, how you achieve impact with your work.
Yes, thank you, Chris. We have one more question here about the intersection between data privacy by design and data science. I am not sure if I understand the question. So what do you mean by data privacy by design? Yeah, we have a comment here saying that even my boss asked me to be alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have that too. Yeah, sorry, going back to the question about data privacy by design. I am not sure what that means exactly. So I am going to assume something and maybe type it in.
Ahead.
Let me know if I am, or if I'm assuming correctly. The idea of data privacy and the relationship with data science, what I understand is that a lot of the models, the data scientists can train on the data, GDPR stuff. So yes, that's the thing. So you can use a lot of data to train your models, like the training set and the features that one uses to input in training, potentially have an intersection with the private data or personal data that is protected by GDPR. So I think this is part of the topic, because GDPR is not only about giving users the transparency about the data being collected and how it's being used, but then as a data scientist or as a data practitioner, it's important to understand what is defined by law as the data that is private and personal, and that people have the right to withdraw their consent or not give the consent at all, because that might change the strategy of data collection for sure, but also the strategy of training data that you're going to use for the models. This is one aspect that I had to deal with already. So yes, you might say, well, I want to use that data to train a model, but if people have to give the consent first, that might mean that you have not that many data points to use as training set, for example, or that your training set will be changing a lot and therefore the model results won't be useful anymore. No?
Indeed, and then there's two things that I've observed that follow from this. So one is actually AI companies specializing on anonymizing data. So there's some new companies, also startups and so on, that actually, kind of do data privacy by design by actually, for example, in the field of computer vision, pixelating faces, and replacing them and so on, so that precisely this kind of facial recognition doesn't really happen. Another trend that's been visible over the past 2 years is the emergence of companies trying to work with synthetic data.
Yes, so you generate data, like fake data, that is not personal or it's not private because it just doesn't relate to any real person. Yeah, that's another way to do it, right?
Scaling on synthetic data. So there's ways in which this happen, and I also actually think that this is going forward is a really interesting topic, because it's wider than just, so GDPR stuff and so on is often about your own data and consenting to the use of the data and so on. But I'm thinking also about I'm thinking about Google, and I'm thinking about Google and NLP, actually language. And I'm thinking about this dominating story of the last half year about Google and its ethical AI team, and the co-leads of the ethical AI team that basically got harassed out of Google. And they got harassed out of Google after working on a paper that showed that the language models of Google may have a problem, and that the language model of Google's may not have a problem precisely because they were built, so to speak, on internet data. So, by basically crawling, doing what Google does and then using this in an NLP style to kind of develop tools and services around it. And then them showing that there was a problem with this parroting at scale, in the sense that the data set was biased and that the outcomes were discriminatory. It goes, I don't know if anybody's seen it, also along the lines of the movie, this documentary called Coded Bias, which was about facial recognition, and an MIT researcher who happens to be Black not being recognized by the camera unless she put on a white theater mask, whereupon the algorithm recognized her, even though it was a plastic face. Yeah, there you go. So this is going to get really, really interesting over the next years, because companies will have to do something about it, and regulators will do something about it. And even though many people always point to Europe and think that Europe is with EU regulation, and there was news in the past weeks in April about EU now wanting to legislate this kind of stuff, I actually think in the United States Congress is also going to do something about this. And I think it's not, because it's happening at home for them. It's not just Google that's implicated in this. Amazon had to withdraw its facial recognition software that they were using for policing because it was clearly discriminatory. And Facebook keeps having troubles with its content recommendation system that produces hate instead of what Facebook dreamed about, everybody coming together. So this is a really interesting space to watch.
Yes, for sure. In the US, they are having regulations now, in some states at least, inspired by GDPR, and also about not using videos by police. But yeah, it's still something that is in development, and there will be a lot of developments in the future.
Yes. And I do actually think that a lot of professional opportunities and also business opportunities will come with this.
For sure.
Johanna, do you have a comment? How do you actually observe this?
Yeah, but this problem of bias is everywhere discussed, right? And that, the results are biased, whatever, like if it's NLP or computer vision. So I definitely think that regulation is important there. And I think also, like, as you said, some companies started pixeling the faces and they didn't get worse results when they didn't focus on the faces, but other things, right? So the face in that case wasn't important at all. So I think in some cases it is possible to respect the privacy rules and still get products done. No. And of course, I think the regulations should happen. No. Because it's really,
otherwise it's hard for companies to have incentives to follow through all of those privacy concerns without any regulations.
Yeah, and especially if it's not only concerning privacy, but having discriminatory results, then I think there's going to happen something.
Okay, we have like 3 minutes to go. So this is the last chance to ask a question, if you like. So if you have anything, please put it on the chat. Otherwise, Dani, do you want to do the closing round?
Yeah, I guess. Thank you for joining. That's the closing round. So we have here on the slide the website of the Guild, theguild.ai. You can go check it out and join our community of data practitioners. You're welcome to do that. Otherwise, you can find us in different places like LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube as the AIGuild. As I mentioned in the beginning of today's session, the session was recorded and it was transmitted live on YouTube. So later it will be available for you to rewatch or to share with someone else that couldn't be here live. And you have also probably signed up to our event via Eventbrite or Meetup. So keep an eye on that because we will have more events coming up. That's it.
Thank you, Dani.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Johanna.
Thank you.
It was really fun to have you today with us as a guest.
It was interesting talking to you. Yeah, really interesting. Thank you.
Okay, then thank you, Johanna. Thank you, Dania. Thank you to everybody that's tuned in. I hope you liked it, and then enjoy the rest of your evening.
Yes. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.